According to my watch, it's 1,400 hours. So we will go with that because I think the Chief Exec says at the same time. Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to see you. Not quite a summer's day, as it's supposed to be. I think the weatherman has gone crazily wrong, and whoever designs the weather's got it even more wrong. So we will move on. So apologies for absence. Mr. White, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. We have no apologies and we're a full house. Thank you.
Wonderful. Declarations of interest. Does anybody have any at this stage in the meeting? No? Okay, thank you very much. Items requiring urgent attention. I'm not aware of any.
Me neither, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So the confirmation of the minutes held on the 11th of June, and they are pages 1 to 4 of the agenda. So call out, I will say page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Right, I'll propose those minutes. Anyone happy to second?
Happy to second.
All those in favour, please.
That's clearly carried for approval of the minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Public questions, I believe there are none.
That's correct, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move forward to the Hub Committee Forward Plan. The only thing I can say from this is we're awfully busy and projected to be even busier. So as we can see, there's many things that are due to be signed off today. Is everybody happy with what is on the subject? Oh my goodness gracious me. I've never seen so many hands go up for that subject. Councillor Mott, I noticed yours first and then Councillor Moody.
Yeah, I'm just curious because it says that I am going to introduce the Tamar Valley National Landscape Management Plan, but I understand that that is not me today.
Councillor Mann, please.
Yeah, I think actually it is me that's going to introduce that item.
That's fine. Mott Mann, we're nearly there. Councillor Moody.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question on page 10, the December report for the Institute of Customer Service and Satisfaction Survey has got you down as the lead. Should that be me?
I think that should be you, Councillor Moody. Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in a similar vein, at the bottom of page 8, under Neighbourhood Services, Plan for Community Development to include arts and culture, that has got Councillor Bridgewater's name next to it, whereas I believed it's my responsibility. So I'm happy to take responsibility for that. But linked to that, the date for that is the 24th of September. And I know that originally we were hoping to have a meeting in July, but that's been pushed back to September. And there's quite a lot of scoping work to be done. And given the amount that there is on the September agenda, I wonder if we might tweak the forward plan to move that into December.
Mr. Hawke, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Elliott. You're quite right. We've had a discussion, and actually we picked it up earlier this week, obviously after the papers were published, to say that that would be pushed back. And you're right, it is you as the lead member. Darryl will be looking at dates for an advisory group in September for members to get involved in shaping that strategy.
Okay. Can I just bring in the Chief Exec at this point, because this is an inordinate amount of work, so I'll let the Chief Exec speak.
So thank you, Leader, and thanks for the various suggestions as to changes in terms of lead member delivery. In terms of the community development report, yes, of course, we need to bring it when it's ready and right, not before it is. But also recognising the number of reports we have scheduled for both September and indeed December, we may want to consider, Leader, you may want to consider an additional hub meeting, I would have thought in October possibly to bridge that gap and perhaps make it a bit more manageable. So
that'd be really helpful if we do. For example, if we try for like 6 weeks after September 1 and 6 weeks before the December. Otherwise, we'll be booking overnight accommodation by the look of it. Is that okay with you, Mr. Hawke? So can I leave you to liaise with Mr. White to try and sort that out, please? Somebody else wants to speak, Mr. Hawke?
No, I was simply saying I would liaise with Councillor Elliott on that one as well.
Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Edmonds, do you have any? No, because you've got quite a lot as well in here. You're happy. Okay, we'll keep you happy. Right. Right, moving on then. So if we could now discuss the draft revenue and capital outturn, which is on page 15 of the agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. The draft statement of accounts for 2023-24 were published on the 15th of July, showing a budget surplus of £149,000. This well-presented report contains all the relevant financial details, including analysis of the budget variations in paragraphs 3.1 to 3.8 and explanatory notes throughout the various sections of the report. The Council generated savings and additional income of £1.5 million, with Treasury Management investment income making a significant contribution to this overall figure. This was achieved by taking advantage of the higher interest rates and the finance team skillfully reviewing market rates daily to secure the best rates. The budget setting process for next year will reflect the anticipated fall in interest rates and the impact of reduced income from this source. The Council also secured extra business rates from identifying renewable energy sites, and car parking income is returning to pre-COVID levels. Reflecting the current economic climate, the Council incurred additional costs and a shortfall in income of £1.48 million. The pay award, waste collection and temporary accommodation all contributed to the increased costs. Inflationary pressures were also evident in IT software and contracts, utilities and insurance expenditure. There was a shortfall of £103,000 in planning income, and the bad debt provision for debtors increased by £0.94 million. Capital expenditure amounted to £4.33 million and included the purchase of 8 properties in Oakhampton and Tavistock for refugees and temporary accommodation. And a full breakdown of capital expenditure is set out in Appendix A. Total external borrowing reduced during the year to a figure of £27 million after making interest payments of £719,000 during the year, and no new borrowing was taken during the year. Reserves are at a prudent level, with unearmarked reserves increasing by £149,000, the budget surplus, and total £1.72 million. Earmarked reserves have increased by £2.25 million to £11.15 at the end of March 24. A summary of the Council Tax and Business Rates Collection Fund is set out on page 123 of the agenda. Council tax collection will be top quartile at 98.3%, and business rates will be second quartile at 97.78%. The business rates deficit of £1.05 million reflects the volatility in business rates income and is due to the additional relief granted by central government. As explained in the report, the compensation grant received from the government will offset this deficit during 2024-25, so in effect it's a timing issue. A one-off net adjustment of £83,000 has been credited to the income and expenditure account in respect of the housing benefit debtors position. This was due to a software issue affecting a number of councils. So another successful financial year for the council and the finance team, who have effectively managed the budget during a challenging economic climate to produce a surplus position. My thanks to the finance team for their expertise. And as a final note, Chair, our new external auditors, Bishop Fleming, will commence their audit of the accounts at the end of July. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Edmonds, please? Councillor Elliott, please.
So partly it's not a question, but just to again thank the finance team, because this is a really excellent outturn to be above budget, but not too much over, not have too much of a surplus. But I had a specific question about the homelessness and the costs of temporary accommodation. So clearly we under budgeted for that in the last year, and we know that there's a housing crisis, but it would just be interesting to hear a little bit more about what we're planning for the future and whether we feel we've got enough in the budget for the future. Clearly we're investing in housing, but are we doing enough? That would be my question.
We did anticipate this question, and Mrs. Blake said I'll be there to answer it, but she's not here. I've just sent her a message actually, but it's quite comical that exactly what she thought would actually happen. So,
Councillor Elliott, if anyone else has got a question, can we take that first and give Mrs. Blake time to get here? I can hear a door just going. Did anybody else have any questions on the finances? Yeah. Councillor Moody, please.
It's actually not a question, a statement. I'm sorry if we're going through debate later. But just thanks to the team again, and also good news on the car parking increase back to pre-COVID days. That's very, very good news.
That is, it shows tourism's going back up again, doesn't it? Right.
Perhaps, Leader, we can answer the first part of Councillor Elliott's question around the budget.
Okay.
I'm sure Lisa, well, I hope Lisa would agree. I don't think it was a case of under budgeting. I think it was the demand was probably greater than we anticipated as the impact of the housing crisis increased, sadly. So I think that's what's got us into this position. But you'll be aware that the council's investment in Plymouth Road, converting 20 Plymouth Road, is it? And purchase of 8 properties around the borough, essentially for refugees, but with that secondary use of temporary accommodation, which again will be very helpful. And you're right, that is something we do need to, as a council, address in terms of how do we provide more temporary accommodation, particularly in the short term, as sadly there seems no immediate end to the housing crisis. But I don't know, Mrs. Buckle, whether you can add to that in any way.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Yes, exactly that. I mean, the homelessness budget we'd set at just under 300,000. I think what we're seeing is that the additional expenditure, particularly on temporary accommodation, was starting to go over and above what we can claim through the Department of Works and Pensions subsidy. Our team track that on a monthly basis with the housing team. So when we were doing our budget monitoring reports to members that came back to the hub committee, we could see that due to the lack of accommodation and the housing crisis, that our costs were starting to increase. I have to say we've got the lowest numbers of homelessness across Devon with regards to that. So many districts are seeing their costs vastly in excess of what we have in terms of that. But yes, that's right. Going forwards, I think the housing team and ourselves, we expect those costs to plateau and possibly decrease, because as Councillor Edmonds has said, we've got capital projects to deliver more affordable housing. We have got the local authority housing fund properties now, the 8 additional properties. So we are hoping that expenditure we will now see not still increasing but plateauing off. That's what we're anticipating, but we're continually monitoring that along with the housing team. Thank you.
Not oodles to add on that, and that was just, and the bit about the fact that we had planned for this already. We are aware of it. We've also got 20 Plymouth Road. There's three flats there. We've got LAF 1 and 2, which we did, which Councillor Edmonds mentioned. And rightly so, it wasn't a reflection on us as an authority. It's just the fact that a fact of life at the moment is that temporary housing is at big expense for most, and we are by far the best. We've got the lowest rate in the whole of Devon, so it's the big ticks all around there. You took a lot of my speech for later, actually, so that's fine.
Peter, can I just come back and add, in our temporary housing stock, I forgot to mention number 3 Spring Hill, which I think is hopefully currently being refurbed, and I think that will be 2 additional units, or 3, I can't remember now. But so, you know, there are some good efforts being made here in terms of upping the amount of temporary accommodation, but, you know, I think it will take a while to gear it up to the current demand.
If the hub would bear with me till I do my update in a little while, I've got the exact numbers on this, so including how many people we've got in temporary accommodation, but I won't do it now because I'll have nothing to do in a minute, won't I?
So could I offer a note of caution, possibly? I think we planned well, and clearly the position in West Devon is better than in other parts of Devon, but this is our demand-led issue. It's a big issue for all district and housing authorities across the country, and I think we're actually a long way from getting to the peak of this issue personally. Now, I'm certain that our housing team will have been planning well for that with Mark's support and leadership. I'm certain that we will be budgeting effectively for it, but I would not wish to give the impression that this is over, and I think it will continue to be a pressure on our finances for the next 12 months, 2 years probably, until we see how our own plans progress, and indeed how the new government's plans to tackle housing come to fruition. So it's an area we're going to have to keep a sharp eye on, I think, but a bit like some of the demand-led budget pressures in upper tier authorities, which are outside their direct control. They present and then they have to respond. Temporary accommodation is exactly that feature for us. And nationally, it is a big, big issue. And perhaps so far, it hasn't impacted our budgets quite as much as it has in some parts of the country. It's a major lobbying issue for District Councils network. It's certainly an issue which the LGA is aware of and will also be lobbying government on, and we'll obviously be joining those calls.
I have to say, we've got off very lightly so far. Councillor Mann and I yesterday attended a South West Council's meeting, and we were told there's got to be another 11,000 refugees accommodated down here. So it's fairly tough numbers. And I do know that some councils, they've gone 80% over their temporary accommodation, and it's actually causing them to be near to issuing Section 114 notices. If you put in, by the time you've got adults and children's social services, temporary accommodation, particularly if you're a unitary, is really, really hitting councils very, very hard. And something has to be done because it is something that we have to pay for, but we don't really get anything back to help us pay for it. So, as the Chief Exec has said, it is demand-led, but actually there's not a lot of payback going on in the background, and this government haven't said anything yet as to what they intend to do about it. So we just have to keep paying the bills, as they would say. But thank you for the question, Councillor Elliott. Any other questions on Councillor Edmonds' report? Did you have recommendations? I think you did, didn't you, Chris? We're noting. So is everybody happy to note, please? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Right. Page 31 now of the agenda, and that is the Corporate Peer Challenge Outline Plan. You will have seen it all, but I'm afraid the Chief Exec and Mr Hawke have altered it before we get there in their inimitable style. It's already come out and it's altered. So it's not many alterations, but I'm going to let the Chief Exec go through it.
Well, I think technically speaking, Leader, we'd like to propose to the Hub Committee that the Hub Committee allows that to happen. So it is
Very well put.
It is an outline plan. There have been a number of informal and formal discussions with members about the corporate peer challenge, the report itself, the findings, the key recommendations they'd made, and how we were due to respond to that. What we have here is the outline plan. In a couple of instances, impacted to some extent by the planning we had to do recently around the general election. A couple of these dates have shifted a little bit. In a couple of other places, we think it's important to strengthen the political ownership of some of the actions as well. So I'd like to recommend that if you're prepared to endorse the plan as per the recommendations in the report, Leader, Mr. Hawke will circulate an updated version of the plan to Hub members for your comments. As the report says, we're planning to bring the final report back to September. We want to make sure it's up to date and aligned. So if that's okay.
Mainly Hub leads, but performance and resources get singled out. You're singled out, and community wellbeing is singled out, and then work with members to identify areas where the council wants to focus its lobbying energy. We've got that as autumn 24, but I think what we need to stress is in line with new government focus, because I've had the report of a LGA meeting yesterday, and I said to the Chief Exec, I could really feel the winds of change coming in, that what we were doing we may have to disregard because it's new government. So you can really feel the winds of change coming forward. So I think that's just something that is, it's just the Chief Exec there, is it? No, it's the leader. Oh, yeah, both of us. So yes, so those ones are just going to be in red when Mr. Hawke sends out a new updated version of it. Other than that, any questions, anyone? No? No? Marvellous. Thank you very much, Mr. Hawke, for everything you've done on it, along with the Councillor Mann.
I just wanted to know who was the lead member for governance.
Councillor Dexter, wouldn't it? Oh, probably me. Oh, okay. I did try fobbing it off there, didn't I? Right, okay, that's me, obviously, Councillor Mann. Right, so thank you very much, Mr. Hawke, and to the Chief Exec for getting this together. We have started to monitor it, as we've also been doing with the council plan. So what are my recommendations? That we endorse? Oh, hang on. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Right. Okay. Is everybody happy to endorse note? Yep. Thank you very much.
Leader.
Thank you very much. Right. If we move to page 45. Really sorry, that's me again. This is the Integrated Performance Management Report, and this is the monitoring that is taking place by me, Mr. Hawke, and the Chief Exec. And we've been, I think we're now calendared for meeting monthly to see how everyone is getting along with their sections of the council plan. So I'm really sorry, but you're all being monitored. To see where we are and that we stay on track with it. Mr. Hawke, you've got a couple of updates for it, haven't you?
I have, Leader. I can certainly update. But I mean, I think it's just really to say this is the first time that the Hub would have seen an integrated performance management report, and it really is intended to be a sort of high-level overview snapshot, something that's quite easy to digest, rather than a deep dive into a particular theme, and those deep dives will happen through the overview and scrutiny process. So it really is a snapshot, bringing together sort of an overview of some of the KPIs, which we are currently reviewing and we'll be taking back through the overview and scrutiny process. Again, a snapshot of our strategic risk profile and a page per theme for each of the delivery plans. So not a in-depth report by any view, but just an overview. So hopefully members will find it helpful in terms of monitoring progress, and it will be used moving forward for those one-to-one discussions between lead members and hub leads. And we're certainly monitoring it at an officer level on a monthly basis through our strategic delivery board to really look at any risks related to any of the actions. So that's just to add to the sort of approach that we're taking at the moment.
You did have the threes that are the three that aren't quite on track that you're going to update, because I couldn't get it properly and I've been meeting with the chief exec, so haven't seen if you replied to my email.
Unfortunately not, leader. I came straight from another meeting. But yes, so there are three actions in the delivery plan that we class as underway but with significant issues at the moment. The first one is action P1.4 in the council delivery plan, which relates to developing a plan for preserving the Duke of Bedford cottages in Tavistock. And that's really been delayed due to changes in personnel within the team, but will be a focus for the team to take forward moving forward. Unfortunately, Mr. Powell has had to dash off. He would be here to give a more in-depth update, but that's certainly one that's on the radar. The next one is around the developing a strategy for a longer-term sustainable delivery plan for leisure services within the borough. That one's currently off track, but progressing a market appraisal is the comment that we've got at the moment. So further updates to members in due course, and preparing an asset management strategy, which is something that's been kicking around for quite a while. So again, really been delayed due to personnel issues and the recruitment of a head of land and property, which is currently underway. So that would be one of the first things that they focus on. So I think the three that are off track are all ones that members are aware of, so there should be no surprises coming out of that report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawke. Does anybody have any questions, please? No? Marvellous. You obviously write brilliant reports, Mr. Hawke, that nobody needs to ask any questions. So that's really good. So thank you very much for that. Let's just go back to the beginning. So we are going to recognise the positive progress in delivering against actions in the adopted plan and note the summary of the key operational performance and strategic risk profile of the council. So everybody, if we're happy with that, can we please vote now? Hands up. Lovely.
Unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, if we move to page 65. Oh, sorry. Yeah. You can now speak now. You can speak now, because Mrs. Blake has now arrived.
Hello, Mrs. Blake. I'll keep this brief. I've got off lightly this week. It's just really this time. It's only an update, a verbal update, so I'm more than happy to. We have covered a lot of it earlier on with Councillor Edmonds' paper, but I will read out what I was going to read out anyway, and apologies for repeating. Last Friday saw the launch of the eagerly anticipated report of the Devon Housing Commission, who had been appointed by the Devon Task Force to produce a set of recommendations for housing authorities, which, if acted upon, could bring about real change for the housing crisis facing the whole county. Whilst I have not had time to read the 410-page document, which is here, cover to cover, the 31 recommendations are certainly food for thought and challenges that will chime significantly with West Devon members. Through the leader's involvement as chair of the task force and office of representation, we have been able to raise issues such as disposals, second homes and holiday lets, rural right to buy and challenges of developing in rural areas. It will give us a valuable evidence base in which to lobby the new government, and it is our plan to write to both the new government and the MPs representing West Devon, inviting them to meet with us and discuss the housing crisis. I would urge all members to read the fantastic, fascinating report, and it will be a focus of the next Housing Advisory Group early in the autumn. Last week saw the launch of the West Devon housing offer. Hopefully you all saw my video, apologies. And again, a plea from me, if you have landowners who are interested in bringing forward affordable housing for local people in your towns or villages, please ask them to get in touch. This is one of the key ways we can support, in particular, our rural communities with much needed affordable housing. We have also contacted all towns and parishes with the parish housing profiles, which are available on the website and are a handy snapshot of information on the housing need in West Devon. Actually, on what we did earlier on, I mentioned earlier on, the redevelopment of 20 Plymouth Road, which are 3 flats for temporary accommodation, is running to budget and schedule. We hope to welcome the first residents in the autumn. In addition, 3 Spring Hill will be ready towards the end of summer, following modernisation as a further unit of temporary accommodation. We currently have 14 households in temporary accommodation, with 12 being single people and 2 families. Work on the scheme in Princetown continues, and we are anticipating being in the position to submit a pre-app to Dartmoor National Park in late summer before further community consultation and a full planning application submitted in the autumn. We're also speaking to housing associations about any interest in our land at Wonnacotts Road and how this might be brought forward as affordable housing, all of which will be brought back to members at the appropriate time. My September report will focus on the progress of the home upgrade grants and the work we are doing around damp and disrepair in people's houses. This will be particularly timely as the King's Speech outlined extension to the Decent Homes Standard and AWAB's law being extended into the private rented sector, which is a very positive step. Thank you, that's about it.
Can I just chip in? That report is not 410 pages.
What did I
It's
say?
110.
Did I? Sorry. I told you I hadn't read all of it. Did I say 410?
Yes, you did. Right, I would like to say before we go anywhere, and I think the Chief Exec and Mrs. Blake know where I'm going, I am really super proud of this Housing Commission report. It has surpassed all my expectations of what I thought was going to be delivered. I think Lord Best has summed it up really well. I did have it forwarded to you all after the embargo was lifted at 3 o'clock. And if you only read pages 1 to 12, and I think 3 of those are indexes of the contents, but if you only read those pages and you don't get time or chance or interest to read the rest, please read those. There are 23 recommendations to the government. Lord Best describes this as the blueprint document for a new government to be able to use, because many of the issues found in our neighbourhood is actually pretty much countrywide. The university, through Matt Dodd, have already received other expressions of interest from counties who would like the same work done for them. So this really is, you know, a one-off, and it could go a lot further. We now have to look, and we will discuss, and I'm sure as a council with Mrs. Blake and our housing lead, Councillor Renders, as to how we take part in our share of the work that's being asked of us and the work that is being asked of us to be involved in with Devon as a whole over this, and how under the devolution for Devon deal with the combined county authority, how this document will fit into that. And Lord Best has set out how we can do that effectively. So, you know, huge thanks from me, and they were given to the Commission and for former Councillor Judy Pearce, for her nous, I think is about the best word to say, and determination to get this on its road. And, you know, I only took it forward and led it for a year, but she was by then on the commission. So, you know, we did pay our respects, and I did as well when I was asked to speak, to say how, you know, if it wasn't for her, and for us being able to get hold of Lord Best was just absolutely incredible. He's taking it into Parliament this week and the House of Lords. It is that powerful a document. So for us to be part of that, I'm really pleased, and I couldn't be more proud of the part I've played in it, particularly with disposals, which he's really recognised, because government were unaware. When I pointed out about disposals and said it's endemic, Lord Best hadn't really heard that. He went to Michael Gove, literally went to, and said to him about it, and they didn't know, because it turns out that registered providers have to provide the information on how many houses they've built, how many of them were for social housing, and how many of them are right to buys. Nowhere does it say, and how many did you get rid of? So how many were for disposals? And they didn't have to write that down anywhere. So it's only when questions started being raised, and Lord Best, who lives up in Yorkshire, he went back home, pinged me an email and said, it's happening in Yorkshire, as if it was something really new. But actually, it's been going on for quite a while. And as we know, we'll take South Seal, because it's the easiest one to take. They do not have any homes for social housing anymore. Live West have sold them all off. And there's nowhere in very cramped rural villages, that in our case also happen to be in Dartmoor National Park, that you can build to replace. And the answer we received from Live West is it's cheaper to build in the urban areas. So, you know, we really need to be able to keep our small villages alive, because if we don't, we're going to lose all the village schools and everything else. And who wants a 4 or 5-year-old having to get on the coach to go into a, you know, an urban area and perhaps spend 20 minutes on a coach? They're just little children. They should be able to just walk to school. So, yes, sorry, I'm getting off on one. Right. Questions, please. Councillor Edmonds.
Well, on that excellent point that you've just highlighted there, are there any moves to perhaps stop the practice of housing providers selling off these properties in rural areas? Something on the basis of, you know, if there's no space to replace that in that community, then you can't sell it, you've got to improve it.
I think I might ask Mrs. Blake to answer that.
I, again, haven't read it cover to cover yet, but actually there are some recommendations in there about the regulator of social housing taking some, developing a framework as to when a housing association is looking at disposing of a property, some of the criteria that they have to meet, which is really encouraging. I think it will be difficult. At the moment, a lot of the reasons for disposal are around the commitments that RPs have made around around climate interventions. So it will have to be there will have to be some more money, I think, for housing associations to retrofit their properties, for them to sort of change the path in which they're going down. But there are some actions within here around disposals, which is really encouraging.
It's frustrating, isn't it, Councillor Edmonds? Microphone.
Housing providers surely exist for. So I think they need to take a long, hard look at their practices and perhaps review them.
Unfortunately now, their ethos is not the same as it was. They're now more of a business developer, as opposed to the business of we look after our tenants and we protect, etc., which is what it was when I first joined West Devon Homes. back in 2003. That was the ethos, and I know when Mrs. Johnson, when she worked for them, that was the ethos. It was about the tenant. It is no longer, and we have been told it multiple times that that isn't their ethos anymore. And the Chief Executive and I, sorry, we're wandering slightly, the Chief Executive and I, with our corporate parenting hats on, we have heard from Live West, a member of staff who was quite high up, actually tell us that when you're giving a tenancy to somebody who's experienced care and has a corporate parent, etc., it's one mistake and you're out, as opposed to they would have given some care, some guidance. And the answer was, we haven't got time for that anymore, we're not interested. You know, they don't get the opportunities to make a mistake. You know, when you've all got a home and you've been in the situations they are growing up, to have this home all to yourself, you just want to, you know, go off the wall slightly, because that is the background they come from for a lot of them. And actually just to be able to say, no, if you do this again, you will be out. But they're not always given that opportunity even anymore. And the housing provider said, we're not here to look after them. So the ethos is completely gone. Somebody else's hand was up. Councillor Jury.
Thank you, Leader, and congratulations on getting the report done. It is a massive achievement, and I'm pleased it's getting the traction that it is. We've previously had sort of outline discussions about ideas of maybe trying to create some sort of super exception site designation within our JLP for small developments within rural settings that would be 100% affordable homes in partnership with housing associations. Has there been any room for those sort of suggestions within the report, or what are your thoughts about that idea at this stage?
I'll answer that, but I'll also bring in Mrs. Blake, because we've looked at that within the housing offer. That is what they are talking about. But also the report focuses a lot on community land trusts. And, you know, gone are the days where a community land trust took 7 years before it did anything. They have got much quicker, not a whole lot quicker, but now some of the community land trusts, they're able to use Section 106 money. They're allowed to apply to Homes England. They're allowed to, registered providers will actually come and be the developer. But it's very small. It doesn't really happen everywhere. There is a really good scheme in South Hams, Nos Mayo and Newton Ferrers, and that's for 125 homes. That is a really good one to go and have a look at. It's been in a couple of our documents, hasn't it? It's had a mention. That's a really good one to go and have a look at, where who would have thought in Newton Ferrers and Nos Mayo they'd be able to go to the planning committee with 85% support of the local communities, because they recognised that those exclusive, and I think that is the best word, they're not far short of Salcombe, but exclusive areas to live would support 125 homes being built in their area to keep the sustainability of those there. And I was, you know, blown away by the actual support, and have seen the letter that was wafted by the chairman of that parish council who went and took the results. I don't know whether Mrs. Blake, you want to add any more to that than we are trying with CLTs and things, aren't we?
Absolutely. There are a couple of recommendations that play into that in the document, Councillor Jury, around rural exception sites, working in partnership with CLTs, and another one as well about making sure that the mix is right, that actually you are building all the properties that people need. You're not building for people, you're not building for profit. Actually, if what the housing need is through any tenure is whether that's affordable or for open market, is you're buying what the local need is, not 4 or 5 bedroom homes for retirees, that actually it's what the local people need. very encouraging. They are, yeah, in the report, page 7, I just found them.
See, between 1 and 12. Councillor Moody, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh,
yes,
sorry.
I'd like to congratulate everyone on this report. I think it's brilliant. I just have a question about unoccupied properties. I know some years ago when I've asked, I think about 10 years ago, there were about 365 empty properties in West Devon. I know our officers have done a lot of work to reduce those. Do we have a final figure or an updated figure today?
If you remember when Mr. Powell first arrived here, that was one of his first jobs, was to get down the numbers of unoccupied properties. We got ours down to a really low level. We were years ahead of other authorities in the county and the country. And the ones that we were pretty much left with were really difficult probates where properties just get abandoned. You know, somebody's in Australia and somebody else doesn't talk to somebody else, and all the family squabbles that go on. I did ask Mr. Powell not that long ago, Mrs. Blake, and I don't know why, but I thought it was about 2. I tell you who answered us. It was Mrs. Hotchkiss. So what I'll ask Darryl, Mr. White, if he can do at the end of this meeting, is just ask Mrs. Hotchkiss, because she did give us the breakdown as well of them.
Thank you. And is there anything pertaining to that in the report? There isn't. About reinstating empty properties?
I'm not sure there is, to be very honest, because it's not come up. But I think it's because, as Devon, we've been recognised that we've actually done a lot of work on that already because we're so desperate for homes. And as you quite rightly remember, we were about the first. And I think others sort of picked up on it because it makes a difference to your council tax income. And I think Mrs. Buckle will support that. Is one of the reasons why we did it, wasn't it, when we did it all those years ago? And I think others cottoned on. So actually, in fairness, I don't think it's something that actually really comes up in here. And logically, yes, I agree with you. It probably should, but I think because we've all done it, nobody talked about it, which could be a bit of a mistake, I'll be honest. Right, the Chief Executive line. Oh, no, sorry, Holly. Councillor Pulbury Green.
So, sorry, I've lost my voice. I had some queries over rural housing and the Housing Association's monitoring of existent housing in rural communities. Is there any data collection ongoing as to whether or not the housing associations are actively not maintaining properties or passing properties on through succession to relatives? Do you know? Because I've had 2 people in the last week come and speak to me about this and feel that there's something, to quote them, not myself, untoward and concerning. One could assume that would be an easy route to remove tenants out of properties and, again, add to the decline of rural villages and rural areas. And that's a great concern of mine.
With assured tenancies that housing associations usually use as a matter of course, there is some succession rights within that. Usually you can succeed once to the tenancy. If that's not the case, if that's gone on more than, and it's a single person in a 3-bedroom house, they wouldn't normally allow that to a second succession. Perhaps if it was a family that were otherwise going to be homeless, they may, in that case, consider that it was prudent to let them stay on in a second succession, but that would be a fresh tenancy. But we can look into those, and whoever's brought those to your attention, we can absolutely, if we've got an address, we can check that out. And with not actively repair, I mean, if repairs are being reported to the housing association and they're choosing not to do them or not doing them or delaying them, then of course we can take that up as disrepair, and we've got avenues into doing that as well. So just let us have those addresses and we can take that forward.
Thank you.
So thank you, Leader. And I think most of what I want to say has already been said, but this report is a phenomenal achievement. It brings together information from Devon as a whole. It is a hugely important report, and we absolutely must seize the opportunity it provides. The level of evidence and analysis presented in this is phenomenal. And to get that information from all of the districts across Devon and Torbay, disappointing that Plymouth's information isn't included, but nevertheless, it provides all of the evidence we need. The critical thing now, of course, is we come up with a Devon-wide solution because we can't solve this on our own. So the initiatives we have in West Devon are excellent, and I'd like to compliment lead member and Izzy Blake for the work they're doing. I think we are doing all of the right things, but much of this is structural and will not be solved by a single borough council acting on its own. So well played to our leader for chairing the Housing Task Force. It's been phenomenally successful. It's bound all of those housing authorities together. Well played to the previous leader of South Hams in also pushing this cause. And I'd like to pay tribute to Exeter University, actually. The quality of the research that's gone into this is outstandingly good. And with good research comes good evidence, and with good evidence comes good decision making. So I'm hoping that we will take that as our opportunity now to work together, galvanising all of the housing authorities across Devon and seeking to persuade the county to also contribute towards the solution. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Moving on now to page 60. No, it's just a verbal update.
Apologies, it took so long. It was supposed to be a quick update.
Item 11, Tamar Valley National Landscape, 25 to 2030. No, I'm sorry, Councillor Edmund.
The executive just said, and this is obviously a really, really good report, and I'll add my congratulations to your part you've played in that, and indeed everyone who's been involved in that. And given the importance of it, I wonder, can we revisit this? I've not had a chance to read this 410-page report, and so if I'm honest, I'd like to be able to read it, and I kind of get the feeling that we could all probably do with a bit more time to read some of this, and particularly the recommendations, and perhaps for us, either this committee, ONS, the council, to look at those, understand those recommendations, and either we push back on them or how do we support them, revisit this, not to lose this wonderful report, and make this a theme to make sure we get full value out of this, out of the work that's been put into this. It seems absolutely key to what we're going to be doing over the next months, year.
Mrs. Blake, I'll put you on the hot spot. I can answer for a Devon perspective, but you're a West Devon perspective.
I just wanted to
Yeah, Councillor End has said that he'd like to write to the new Secretary of State and obviously include some of the things that we put in our council plan and our housing strategy, a lot of which resonates with what's in the what's in the report of the Housing Commission, which we can absolutely do. And actually having this wealth of evidence as well to sort of, make our point even stronger is really helpful. So that's one thing that we can do. Councillor End has also said that actually it's going to be the focus for the next housing advisory group, but if we could look at an all-member briefing on it with some of the highlights, if that would be possible, if that would be what people would welcome.
Whatever, but I just would hate to lose anything from this really important report. We need to get full value out of this, and I'm sure this will inform our decision-making moving forward to some extent. So it's really just to capture it and make sure we keep some focus on it, either in your verbal updates or whatever format. But first and foremost, I think we all need to really understand
Agreed, that's why I put
at
it in
least the
there.
recommendations.
Mrs. Blake put it in there for us to do that very thing. But well, as I said, we don't mind switching it from. If you want it to be an all-member, we can do that either way, can't we? It's not a problem. Whichever's easier.
Councillor West, please.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce what Chris has said. I mean, we as a group said that our council plan was a living document. Therefore, this should be feeding into any decisions we make going forward in terms of what we can and cannot do. So I think there is, as Chris said, it's a great opportunity here to use this to A, inform the council plan to make sure that's where we want to go and what we want to do, and B, how we can get out, influence outside the new government, etc., to actually help us develop those plans to where we want to be and where we want to get it to. So no, thank you. I haven't read it yet, all 410 pages, but I'm looking forward to it.
1,010. We did say we would get, if needed, everybody a hard copy. We did offer that.
I welcome it on so many
I think
levels.
you've sent it out now, haven't you?
I've sent it out as an email, but if people want it as a hard copy, okay. I think it is important enough, and it's only 110.
What does that say?
Yeah. Can I just say about this bit? From a Devon perspective, Lord Best has actually recommended, the Commission recommends that the combined county authority should devise an overarching Devon housing strategy that provides a roadmap for addressing Devon's housing crisis over the next decade. What Lord Best is saying through there is that basically, in my little humble opinion, that we need to get on with this now, this Devon housing strategy, because this evidence is fresh. If we leave it for 2 years and don't do anything, the evidence is out of date, and the report to do again will cost 5, probably 10 times the amount that it has cost so far. And if we don't do it fairly quickly, we won't get the buy-in of Exeter University, and at the moment they are fully on board. Matt Dodd, who has led on this, he is with the university until next April, when he then has to make a decision. Does he go back to Homes England because he's been seconded for 2 years? So, we really do need to get on with it at a Devon level as well. And what would be really helpful is if West Devon, when we go through, we stress to Devon County that this really needs to happen now. I did say to the chief exec for Devon, Donna Manson, that we need to be really doing it now in the background, because whether we get devolution next week or whether it comes a lot later down the line, we can be doing this work in the background, because the work needs to happen now. It can't afford to wait for the shilly-shallying that could go on as to whether we go through devolution and become a CCA authority. Sorry, Andy.
So thank you, Leader. So the report's really helpfully structured insofar as the recommendations are structured by organisations. So there are recommendations for local authorities, there are recommendations for the Devon system, etc., other organisations. I think, given the importance of the report and given what members have suggested, I would recommend that we do have the Housing Advisory Group, of course, Councillor Renders, for you to lead, but I think we should have an all-member briefing on it, actually. But in the meantime, I'd like to suggest we give Mrs. Blake a bit of time with her team to go through this report, understand what it's saying, make a judgment about how that sits, a bit of a gap analysis really. What are we currently doing and what is this suggesting we should do as an authority? So at least we get a position on how West Devon should potentially respond to it and have the briefing at that point, because I think it's really important we give our professional experts the opportunity to give us the benefit of their expertise in relation to it. The advantage of that is, if we are assessing the issues that we should be taking on, we can at the same time think more clearly about the ones which only can be achieved by working in partnership across the Devon landscape. So perhaps we should do those 3 things. Advisory group, and we give Izzy some time to do the analysis, and then we have the all-member briefing at that point. I think that was how we'd get greatest impact, Leader. Thank you.
Councillor Edmonds.
Sorry, just one final point from me, and I refer to 4.4.2 in the peer challenge outline plan, which says reassess our key partners and how we want to work them in the future. Develop our key partnership framework. It seems to me that this would be an ideal opportunity to include this particular report and develop this partnership, make this a priority, and tick the box for the peer challenge report as well.
Okay. Moving on from that very short verbal report on housing, if I could move, I've said the title, Councillor Mann, please.
Well, this will be a very short report on another report, which is actually a wonderful plan for the Tamar Valley National Landscape. So this is a plan that is going out to consultation. So this is just seeking support for going out to consultation from you on the draft Tamar Valley National Landscape Management Plan 2025 to 2030. It's a statutory requirement. It is and does look to be a really comprehensive and positive plan, and it has really put nature first. It has a lot of information about climate adaptation and about working with our residents in the Tamar Valley. So if you have comments about it, for now, my understanding is that Rob Sekula is going to be the best person for you to send them to. Ah, there he is. Yeah, he came as you called the name of the plan. So if you have comments and you'd like to make comments, please can you send them to Rob, or you can obviously send them to me as well. The Council does make a contribution towards the Tamar Valley National Landscape, so we make a contribution of about £10,000. But really, they're doing such amazing things down there. One of the things that we've talked about is, although this management plan is very interesting and we can definitely comment on it, it might be nice for us as a group to also have an informal session for people to learn about the actual on-the-ground work that they're doing in the Tamar Valley in our area. I know that I recently went to Milton Abbott with Councillor Jury to a new allotment there that we have done as West Devon, but they had actually contributed to that as well in order to keep it in the place where it could have water. So they used some of their funding to help them establish that. But this is a management plan, and it's very ambitious. I think it's quite interesting. If you have comments on it, I would welcome them, and please do send them to Rob or myself. And that is it. So there are recommendations to support this going out to consultation, and then to delegate authority to the Director for Place and Enterprise in consultation with myself for the final content of our council consultation response. And then the final management plan will be brought back to the hub for adoption in March next year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Mann? It's a very in-depth plan, but you can see it's embryonic at this stage. I did wonder about some of these dates going forward, practically in the next century. I was thinking, who the heck's monitoring them? But yeah, they do go far forward. Does anybody have any questions? No. So there are recommendations. So Councillor Mann, would you like to take us through your recommendation? Well, they're on the board for everyone to read.
Sure. The Hub Committee agrees to support going out to consultation upon the draft of management plan, delegates authority to the Director for Place and Enterprise in consultation with the lead Hub member for Climate and Biodiversity, the final content of the formal council consultation response, and that the final management plan is going to be brought back to the Hub Committee for adoption on the 11th of March, 2025.
Thank you very much. You're happy to propose those?
I propose those, yeah.
I'll second them. All those in favour? Thank you very much.
It's unanimous.
Everybody.
Thank you, Leader.
Mr. Cooler, you can run away just as quickly as you ran in. Thank Thanks, Rob. Right, moving on to a difficult report now. On page 137, have you been abandoned to this on your own?
No, I'm sure
Councillor
Mr.
Mott?
Swiss is on his way. He assured me
He's on his way.
that he
Did
would be summoned and he would be...
Yeah. Just to introduce it, I found it quite difficult to read in places. It's very disheartening. But hopefully there can be some good solutions to this. I'll let you introduce, or do you want to wait for Mr. Swiss? We can always go back to talking about the housing document.
No, not at all. I'm happy to introduce, Leader.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you'll have all obviously read it, and I'm sure you are aware that neighbourhood plans are documents that we encourage all of our communities to complete. Support is given by a dedicated officer to reflect the importance that we view them, as they are also an important part of the planning process. At this point, I would like to recognise the hard work that has gone into bringing the Oakhampton neighbourhood plan to this point. In the past, officers from West Devon have given advice to the steering group, and despite concerns being raised, they made the decision to submit the document to Regulation 16 consultation and examination. Following this, the examiner has made the recommendation that the plan should not proceed further based on a lack of proper consultation at Regulation 14 stage, and that the plan fails to meet basic conditions as required by the Town and Country Planning Act of 1990. Based on this independent examination, it is my proposal that we agree the recommendations as given on page 137 of the agenda.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions, please? Sadly, we have no Oakhampton members with us. I've not heard anything from anybody in Oakhampton. Have you, Councillor Mott? No. Okay, right. Councillor Elliott, please.
So it was a very thorough report and very clear conclusions. And obviously it's not appropriate to rake over exactly what happened or personalities, but I just wonder if there is any sense of lessons learned for the future, because it sounded from everything in the report as if officers gave a lot of support to the neighbourhood group. So it's not about us learning lessons sort of internally, but perhaps about how we would approach briefing communities in future on neighbourhood plans, or any way of capturing some lessons learned and something positive from this, so that all the sort of time and effort that's gone into this at lots of different levels isn't completely wasted. So that would be my very open question.
I think it's important to remember that communities recognise the length of time that these documents take to produce. It is a huge commitment, hence the support that we give to communities that start to embark on this, and the funding that are available to be able to progress them. It's unfortunate that in this instance, situation maybe got away from them a little, and unfortunately they were unable to bring a suitable plan forward, but it is hoped that they take on the advice that has been given to them, and that they are able to salvage something and be able to bring a plan in the future.
Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just really trying to consider what the options are here. Presumably, the group has the opportunity either to leave it where it is, or to recommence or approach this again with a view to taking it ahead, or what?
Right.
I'm just wondering what the options the group have at this stage.
That's
I'd like to think there was, given where we are, I'd like to think there was potentially a positive route ahead, if the group wished to take that opportunity.
Okay. Mr. Swiss is now here and he'll be able to give us some guidance, hopefully.
Yes, good afternoon. I understand the question is, what are the options now for the two groups? Well, the recommendations from the examiner and in front of you today in the item are fairly clear. It doesn't really leave the Borough Council much option but to not proceed with the plan. That really does throw it back now to both the Town Council and the Hamlets Parish Council to decide on the way forward. They could decide to maintain the position of having a joint neighbourhood plan across both parishes, or they could decide to individually produce their own neighbourhood plan. And I think that's something the Town Council is going to consider very carefully. But they have said that they will assess the position and discuss it with their neighbours in the Hamlets Parish Council. I've not had any indication from the parish as to what their thoughts are at this stage. They instructed their clerk to request a meeting of the steering group, which I understand is actually happening this evening. So following that meeting this evening of the Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group, we might have a clearer indication, hopefully, of their thoughts on the way forward. But either working jointly or individually, given what's happened with the plan and the length of time it's taken to reach this point, they're either collectively or individually going to have to go pretty much back to stage one of the process. But as I say, the options do rest now very much with the town and the parish councils.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So there could be a way ahead, individually or jointly, but then, you know, the next question would be, well, what needs to change in order to overcome any issues that have been identified in this submission? Are they able to do that? Will they need support? And if so, are we able to provide that support?
Well, picking up the last point first, certainly yes. The role of the Borough Council and my key role is to advise and assist any neighbourhood plan group. So that's a duty that rests with us. So we will do our best to support them and give them appropriate advice. As I said, they would have to pretty much, in terms of process, go back to the beginning. One of the reasons for that is because of the evidence that they gathered when they started off the process is now 6, 7, 8 years old. So just the evidence base needs a fundamental update. They would have to go through the preliminary preparation of a plan, redraft it and go through draft plan consultation. So that whole process would need to be revisited. They wouldn't exactly be starting with a blank sheet of paper because they obviously have to prepare a plan with policies in it, and the examiner went over and above what he needed to do in terms of providing a commentary and advice on each policy. So he's given a very clear pointer to them, which is a great help, I believe, as to which policies could proceed pretty much unscathed, which ones either don't meet to conformity with the development plan or don't accord with national guidance, and he's suggested a way forward and how these policies could be amended. So they've got that helpful advice from the examiner available to them. But as I say, in terms of the evidence, revisiting community aspirations in the light of changed circumstances and revised national policy and the process, it would be going back to more or less the beginning.
Councillor Daniel, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask how much impact are the boundary changes going to make to this plan? Because obviously when they started this process, that wasn't even on the horizon, was it? Whereas now the Hamlets are, sorry, very dark. The Hamlets are in a very different situation, as is the Town Council. And what could our councillors, our officers, offer to the council to help them through this process? Thanks.
I'm certainly aware of the proposed changes to the boundaries, and I believe those come into effect in 2027, I believe. So
yes,
I mean, that does give a different context to the potential plan making. If they were to proceed again on a joint plan, then the change in boundary wouldn't really have that much of an impact. But if they were to decide to produce individual plans in the future, then clearly the town council parish area would be greater than it is at the moment. I think we would have to look very carefully and give them advice on whether they could start the process with the boundaries as they are and the implications for the change in administrative boundary during the lifetime of producing a plan, which is likely would be the timetable. Town could apply to extend the neighbourhood plan area at the current time, or in the short term, to include the extension to their area. That's been done elsewhere, certainly in South Hams. But I think we would need to look carefully and give them legal advice as well on that particular aspect as to the impact of the changed boundary during the lifetime of preparing a plan.
thank you.
Councillor West, please.
Yeah, I'm just intrigued by, well, not intrigued, my question is, does this leave Oakhampton and the Hamlets any vulnerabilities in terms of potential development and that sort of thing? Because I thought the plans were sort of designed to help make sure that things didn't happen without agreement. Are they in a vulnerable situation as a result of this not going ahead at this point in time?
No, I don't think it does make them more vulnerable, mainly because we have the adopted joint local plan in place. So those policies obviously remain in force. The intention was that they weren't intending to allocate more land for development, because they're satisfied, and as are we, that the joint local plan provides adequate scope for growth. I mean, it would deprive them of those really local community focused type policies on local design considerations and things like that. But it doesn't, in my opinion, make them more vulnerable to speculative development proposals coming forward.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The Chief Exec, please.
So thank you, Leader. I'd like to thank Mr. Swiss, actually, because I think that there are two things that are absolutely clear and evident from this report, that neighbourhood planning is an enormously difficult undertaking for those communities, and a huge amount of work is involved. Secondly, that in Mr. Swiss we have an officer who is very knowledgeable, capable, and providing all the advice and support that is needed. So, as the report makes clear, the decision really rests with the communities of Oakhampton as to what they wish to do. Once they've formed a view on it, if they wish to proceed or want advice, then we will be there to provide it. And we have had a good track record recently in terms of the support we've given to neighbourhood plans, and that is largely down to the work that Mr. Swiss has done. So I'm confident once they've had the opportunity to assess the examiner's report and reach a conclusion, if they are keen to progress, that they'll have the advice and support that they need. Thank you, Leader.
Are there any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Are you happy to take these recommendations on block? Because I would like you all to really know what you're signing up to, because there's some quite serious recommendations in there. So, are we happy to go on block? Okay. Councillor Mott, would you like to say anything?
No, I'm happy to propose the recommendations 1 to 5 on page 137 of the agendas.
Wait a second.
Thank you. Right, everybody. You've heard the recommendations. Please show.
That's unanimous for those 5 recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. And that brings us to the close of the meeting, everybody. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for allowing slightly off track under a verbal housing report, for which I do apologise, but it's something very important. Thank you all for coming. We will look at the September agenda before then to maybe cut a few items there and put them into October, and look at the December and maybe bring some of those over as well. I'm not sure we'll be able to do too much of Councillor Edmonds because yours is cyclical, and you pretty much need your dates. So it's just others of us where dates may not be quite as important. So thank you all very much. Have a lovely summer, everyone, because I think this is our last meeting before the summer holidays. So have a wonderful August off and come back ready to go.